welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are in the Judean mountains and we are going to start a journey from here to the Teumim cave, a place linked to the wars of Israel and where unprecedented archaeological excavations have revealed something astonishing. Among the findings of weapons, human skulls, ceramics, and lamps, it was discovered that the cave was used as a place of black magic during the Roman period. So we are going there today and discover all this archaeology and underworld practices in the ancient world. So if you are ready, let's get started. We parked the car right here nearby, but from here we have to continue walking because that's the only way to get to the Teumim cave. So let's go. We have a trail to do together now. Also, an important thing for you to know is that the cave is closed in the winter, which is the most pleasant time of the year to walk around here. From the 1st of December to the 31st of March, entry into the cave is completely prohibited. Why? Because it's a bat hibernation site. So for ecological reasons, it's not allowed to enter during the winter, and we'll probably see a lot of bats today too, flying and sleeping in the cave. The entrance to this cave, for a long time, it was completely closed by this large fig tree, and also for that reason, for many centuries, it was forgotten. It was only rediscovered in the 19th century by archaeologists who passed through this place. The archaeologists Claude Conder and Herbert Kirchner. This is a natural cave made of limestone. And you can probably hear already, look. Can you hear? These are the bats. These are the bats. There are thousands of bats inside the cave, and it is 100% dark. There is no lighting here, so we brought our flashlight today to help us. And despite all this, despite not having lighting, yes, it is a place open to the public and people and families come here to stroll, but I assure you that the vast majority of them have no idea of the terrible things that happened here in ancient times. Wow, we are descending deeper and deeper. We can see some very interesting rock formations here, stalactites, stalagmites, and the lighting we are using is not very strong because there are restrictions here on what can and cannot be illuminated. In fact, there is a rule that prohibits illuminating parts of the cave, especially the upper part. This cave is made of limestone, but people in biblical times discovered that there is also alabaster here. And so the Canaanites created an alabaster quarry here, which was a beautiful material used to make luxury items in the ancient world, such as vessels to store anointing oil. This cave has been known since the 19th century, but the first serious archaeological excavations in this place only began in 2009, done by archaeologists from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Bar Ilan University. And what they discovered is that this cave was used as a refuge for Jews during the Bar Kokhba rebellion. In the year 132 after Christ, the Temple of Jerusalem had already been destroyed, the Jews massacred by the Romans. And the Jews tried to make a last great rebellion against the Roman Empire. They are inspired by the Maccabees, when the people of Israel, a few centuries earlier, managed to defeat the great Greek army, a battle that seemed impossible. And Bar Kokhba and his men too, they embark on a mission that seemed impossible. A few Jews defeating the great empire and the Roman army. And they use guerrilla techniques that were also found here inside. They used caves to take refuge and hide, and from here they made surprise attacks against the Romans. And in the archaeological excavations here, the bones of Jewish soldiers were found, as well as the weapons they used to fight against the Romans. But what was the end of this great rebellion? It ended with a great destruction. The Romans destroyed what was still standing in Israel and Judah. And they now take and expel most of the Jews from Israel and massacre 500,000 Jews. Guys, 500,000 Jews, 1900 years ago, was a good portion of the population. And with this great expulsion and this great massacre, for the first time, the Jews become a minority in their own land, and they will only become the majority again once more in 1948 with the Declaration of Independence of the modern state of Israel. So in a certain way, this cave marks the end of the people of Israel dominating their own land. And because of this rebellion, this place will also turn into a place of black magic. Let's see this now. And one more thing I want to tell you about a very important find that was found here was a great treasure of gold and silver coins that were brought here by the Jewish rebels at the time of Bar Kokhba. Finding a treasure like this is fantastic, but we also have to remember that coins at that time had a great significance. The coins were made by the power, by the government that dominated the region. So, for example, the Romans would put coins with Caesar's face and also frequently with their pagan gods, trying to show the superiority of the gods and the Roman Empire. And that's why among the coins found here, coins made by the rebels themselves were also found. Did they want to show that they were going to win and could in the future once again have an independent Jewish government in this place? And did they put Jewish symbols and phrases about the liberation of Jerusalem on the coins? Unfortunately, as we said, this will really only stay on the coins. It must not be easy to do archaeology inside one of these caves. It's already quite difficult for us to manage to film in here. So imagine spending weeks, if not months here working with the bats in the dark and also dealing with the humidity, folks. Everything around us is wet. And amidst all this, they have to search for archaeological remains. Something that might seem completely unnoticed is completely covered in dirt. But if we look Closely, we can see that this here is a little piece of pottery. Now, this cave has been disused for a very, very long time. So it could be that this little piece of pottery was a plate that someone used here during the Bar Kokhba rebellion 1,900 years ago. It could also be from the Roman period. It could be from so many different times. But we put it back here in its place so that in the future, archaeologists can find it again. But let's go, because we still have to really talk about witchcraft and black magic. And the archaeologists continued to excavate this site, and from 2010 they began to find some strange things. The first thing they found is in crevices in the rocks, oil lamps. But they were in somewhat random places, that is, hidden within cracks and crevices in the rock. All of them were intact 120 lamps, folks. That's not a small thing. And another thing that caught attention, they were lamps, you could say, almost new. In ancient times, a lamp was what illuminated the house, the day-to-day. People used the lamps a lot, so when we find normal excavations, lamps, they are extremely used. You can see them burnt, you can see that there was a lot of oil use, but these lamps, they were almost all little used. They start to wonder what all these lamps are doing here. And they keep digging, and they also find weapons in these cracks, mainly daggers. And they start to wonder what these lamps and these weapons were doing hidden inside cracks in this cave. And they keep digging, and then what they find are human skulls. And then they understand perfectly what was happening here. Here were held necromancy ceremonies, Roman pagan ceremonies for communicating with the dead. It was a relatively common practice in the Roman Empire. We have records, in fact, that Emperor Nero and Emperor Hadrian participated in these nefarious practices. And also in the Roman Empire, often these practices were linked to human sacrifices. But thank God, at least what we know up to this point is that here they did not make these sacrifices, but rather the skulls were brought to the location. Here was a place of black magic, and some kind of oracle operated. They performed lampmancy. That means there were witches here who looked at the flames of these lamps, and in the shapes of these flames they tried to make predictions and discover the future. So this was a place of divination and communication with the dead. And of all the places they could go, why did they choose to come to a cave to do this witchcraft and black magic? At that time, they believed that caves, especially caves with deep wells and water sources, like there are here, were considered the entrance to the underworld. And that's why they believed that from here they could call spirits back to the surface. The lamps found here, they were dated to 1,700 years ago. And look how interesting this dating is. I mean, black magic was being done here 1,700 and 1,800 years ago. And 1,900 years ago, the Jews were expelled. It was the end of the Bar Kokhba rebellion that we talked about a little while ago. What happens? Most of the Jews are expelled from Israel or killed So the land becomes relatively empty. And then the Romans are going to spread more and more and occupy more and more of this region. So, when the worship of the God of Israel decreases, paganism will increase here on earth. Of course, these rites that were done here were not new, but they gain even greater strength after the Jews are expelled. We have texts in cuneiform writing that came from the Mesopotamia region, texts from 3,000 years ago that spoke of communication with spirits using human skulls. A text from 3,000 years ago reporting practices that were done here 1,700 years ago. And another shocking thing about these archaeological findings is that the daggers and weapons used in these rituals, they were 3,000 years old. So these witches who were here, they used new lamps from their time, but with weapons over 1,000 years old. This means that these traditions of witchcraft and sorcery, they passed from generation to generation among the pagan peoples here in the region, and unfortunately also sometimes took root within the people of Israel. We have an example of this in the book of Samuel. So Saul said to his servants, "Find me a woman who has the spirit of a witch, so that I may go to her and consult her." And his servants told him, "Behold, there is a woman in Endor who has the spirit of divination." And Saul disguised himself and put on other clothes, and he went, and 2 men with him. And they came to the woman at night, and he said, "I beg you, divine for me by the spirit of witchcraft, and bring up for me whom I shall name to you." Then the woman said to him, "Behold, you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the wizards from the land. Why then do you lay a trap for my life to bring about my death?" Then Saul swore to her by the Lord, saying, "As the Lord lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this." This verse tells us that in the time of Samuel, there were prohibitions and persecutions of people who practiced witchcraft and magic. But we also see the hypocrisy of Saul, who on one hand prohibited witchcraft, but on the other hand, in his time of need, he goes and consults a witch. I hope you enjoyed learning a little about the dark side and black magic here in the land of Israel in its different historical periods. So if you liked it and want more videos directly from Israel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. A kiss, and see you next time.